All right, we're back. Hopefully everyone had a good lunch. Stickies, panda, landwich, whatever you ate. Let's do some review on what we accomplished this morning, and then we'll move on to actually creating the token for authentication and on the authorization portion. So where do we start? Well, we said we need a user to log in, right? We didn't have that. It wasn't a thing for us. So we started off with the models, right? So we created a user model. Somebody walk me through what we did in the user model. Somebody walk me through the schema. Anthony, walk me through the schema.
The user schema?
Yeah.
So from 12 on or the entire?
From 5 to 10.
From 5, well, that's creating a new schema with an email. So you said that the email is going to be a string. They're going to require it. And it's going to be unique. You know what that means. Lowercase, true, that means up. First name, last name, and password are all strings. Password is required and has a minimum length of 8. So we'll throw an error if we don't. And moving on.
Well, that's good. That's good. Stop right there. So I have a question for you. So if I try to create a new user and I do not input a first name and last name, will this still work? Will this? Okay.
Because it'll just assume the parameters probably.
Okay. So let's I'm taking away the first name and last name. And
But couldn't that, even if it worked, it would still cause a database error because there's no.
Well, that's why I'm asking you. Is it if I only send the email and a password, will it save it in the database?
So Mike, the reason I'm confused is if in your form you still have the parameters, so you have those spaces, but.
Okay, so they're there, but they're empty.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it would submit empty. So without required.
So this is what it'll look like, right, in the form.
So it'll just use the email and the password, and I think it'll still work.
Okay. Anybody else think something different?
It will work.
Jose says will. Michael says it will.
It would still work because you said that even if there was something extra, it would just create something new. Can we take that? Should
Let's take bets. Kevin, you want to get in on this? No? All right, cool. All right. So our server wasn't started. Relax, guys. Relax.
You didn't set it to require. My basis for my decision.
Hold your horses, Michael. So it did. It made it, right? But the fields are empty. And you're exactly correct. It's because in our schema we never said make these fields required, right? Okay, I have another question for you. If I fill in the first name and the last name, and I try to submit the same email, will this work?
No, because it's unique. Yeah, email's unique. So, because they created it without a name, it'll probably not recognize it because it doesn't have the name's parameters.
So look at our schema. It's going to fail. Did fail. We did because we have a duplicate email, right? Cool. Good. Okay. Now somebody explain line 12 to 17. Who wants to try a stab at it? Go ahead, Joanne.
All right, this is saying, hold up before you send everything.
Hold up.
Why is this funny?
This is saying that what's passed through, this is the current user. We're setting that variable right there.
Yep.
And then we're taking the password that was entered with the whole JSON user thing. The password part, then we're going to encrypt it, and then.
And what's this 8 again? What's it say? Do you remember?
It's going to salt it
8 times, right?
times.
Uh-huh.
And then we're going to make that the new password.
And store it in a database.
Store it in a database, and then we can continue.
And say, hey, yo, you can go. Keep going.
Is that the same encryption tool that's used for hashing it and retrieving it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's why you can figure it out.
I was curious as well, like how the hell does it work?
I have a question for Michael. What is the value of this? Where am I getting the this from?
This is the body.rec.
Not necessarily, you're close. We're using the body.rec to create the this object, but let's see, more importantly, in the controller, or no, we didn't do the controller yet. In the routes, what in here, what in this page is this?
Sign up page and
Right, okay, so it's in the this is in here somewhere, right? Where is it? Which one is it?
so the parameter that says user would come in from the rec.body,
Mm-hmm.
and that user is turning into JSON string.
It's turning it into a JavaScript object, right? So then what is it? So then this is what? So what is the value of this in here? What variable, what
User.
new user? Okay, so new user is the value of this in here. Okay? Because we're creating the new user using the user constructor, right? And specifically giving it the information from the form that's coming from that we're getting from the rec.body object.
And so new user is creating all the what do we call documents? No, it's creating a new document.
Yes. Well, no, it creates an outline, or it checks to make sure that your document before it saves has all the correct properties that you want, right? So it's going through this schema here, and it's saying, okay, do I have an email? Is it unique? And it's doing all this checking, right? And then right before we save it, we run this method, which changes the password. And that's why this is pointing to the new user. And then if it's saved successfully, then now it's a document in the database.
So it's creating that new user, but it's making an ID. And this is pointing to the ID.
It's not making an ID in the database _ID. That doesn't happen until it successfully saves. It does make a location in memory to point to it, but it doesn't make it like an official database ID just yet.
So it's just really like referencing that point in memory. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
whatever's there, that's the user.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, also with this, how does it know that? Okay, so the argument user is going to be the name, the email, right?
Here.
Yeah.
So the argument user is the saved user document.
Oh, it's everything combined.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And the reason this knows to point to the new user is because I call save on this object, so that way when I'm saying this in this callback function, it knows to point to that specific object. But remember, if we change this to an arrow, it just breaks everything.
Okay. And the only reason you're allowed to put .password is because that's literally one of the
Yeah. Properties. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Good. All right. Who wants to try to stab verified password? Wants to try this? Want to try it, Ted? So first off, first question I have for you is this function used on the model or is it used on a single document? Good. Okay, on a single document. Okay, now how does this function work?
First, the variable client user finds your object in the website body, and
Okay.
using bcrypt middleware, it passes text password and real password. So
And what password is this though?
it's not password.
But where?
It's encrypted password.
From the database, right? Okay. And then what is this cool little thing that we did?
So if it's matched correctly, then it shows very true and message successful login. But then I'm not sure that it shows the message.
Yeah, it did.
Oh yeah.
So we created a function to use on a single document that takes in a text password argument, right? This is the string version password, whatever they use to sign up with, right? We grab the current user just like we did in the pre-save method. And then we run the middleware from bcrypt, excuse me, to check if the password that they entered in the form matches the hash password. Meaning what they do is they kind of run this hash sync again and they check to see if those values are correct, are identical. If they are, then you entered the right thing. Now here's a question for you guys. I'm surprised no one asked it. If you notice here, I created another account with Anthony, right? Anthony has his account, but we left these blank. And I gave him the same password. He has the same password as Harry. Does it create the same hash? Well, you guys want to bet? Make some money? Why don't you think it will, Michael?
Because it's a unique object.
Yeah, it's different email.
Does the email have to do anything with the password? No, right?
I think you have to understand how a hash function works to understand that it's the same.
Well, look it. This is Anthony's password. Oops, no, it's not. Where'd he go? Oh, we can just check the database. Are they the same?
No.
So I used Dragons 1 for both users. And it created a different hash string, right? Encrypted string. But what is the same here? Can we see what's the same? What thing's the same? Let me zoom in.
Oh, the beginning's the same. Oh, okay.
The beginning's the same. So guess what that beginning part is? That's the salt key.
Oh, it's on the password.
In password. Yeah, no. Don't worry about. I'm not talking about object IDs. This specifically. $2A $0.08. Any the characters in between those dollar signs there is the salt key. Okay. That's how it figures out how to encrypt it, what to use to encrypt it.
Why is it different then? It can't technically be a hash function.
Yeah, it's different. It's because it uses random characters when it does its salting, and it knows the salting algorithm because of this the salt key. So it knows what algorithm it used. So it'll use
But
that.
what I'm
to do.
saying is, if it's got the same key on both of those, it should be using the same hash function. So given the same set of characters, it should produce the same thing.
Well, this is telling us otherwise.
Well, I'm saying it's probably not strictly a hash function.
Well, this is I have this in a document somewhere else, but I'm not exactly 100% sure on how this hashing algorithm works. I used to do some research on it before. I have it in a document. I can show you guys later. It's when I used to teach Rails, because Rails uses the same thing. It uses bcrypt, does the same hashing algorithm. But basically, this is I think it's symmetric or one way. I have to look it up now, but we'll talk about it later. But you basically, with this hashing algorithm, I can't take my encrypted password and find out what the original string was. There's no way for me to do that. Does that make sense? Like, if someone were to go to the database and grab this, they could not decrypt it. Not necessarily, not that it's impossible, right? But it's very difficult for them to do that. They would have to know the hashing algorithm I used, how many times I salted it, my salt key, and all those things in order for them to get the decrypted version of it. Okay?
When you say salted, like what is that exactly?
Salted means just mixing. Think of it like blending it up, right?
It's like an algorithm that just like flips stuff. So like, a hash function generally is for verification, not for encryption. If it's strictly a hash function, because a hash function essentially looks and makes sure that when you run a function on the contents, you get back something that. So.
Encryption is just something. It's a very complex topic, and you don't need to know exactly how it works unless you want to be like some crazy encryption scientist or you want to like mine for bitcoins or something. But just know that we have libraries to do it for us.
Yeah.
So we pass in the string. We tell it how many times we want to mix, and it gives us back the encrypted version.
So but usually like checksums and hash functions are oftentimes, like I said, for validation verification. You're not actually encrypting anything. Usually with the hash function or with what's the other one?
Yeah, I know.
Checksums, because you're like, if you download a package, you want to know that that package didn't drop any bits. And so all you're doing when you run a checksum is to see that they match, right?
Yeah.
So it's saying like, here's this CDN or whatever. Was there any kind of problems when I downloaded it? Okay, I'll run a checksum real quick, you get back the hash, and then you compare the two. If they match, then you're good. Either of those leave bits. Whereas encryption is actually like, to keep someone from deciphering.
Yep.
It's not just to like check the validity, it's actually to keep someone from figuring out.
Right. Okay, so then in the login route, we retrieve the user's email that they entered in the form, and we retrieve the password that they entered in the form. And then the first part is let's find a user, right? Let's find a user based off that email. If there is one, this actually does need to go back. If there is a user, let's verify their password. That should return an object that has a valid property, and then we'll just send back that object to the client. Okay? So let's try our code out with, is our server running? Yeah, it is. So I'm going to just send a request to login, and I'm going to send an email that I don't have, right? Maybe I forgot to type a P. All right, so it should say no user found. Good, awesome. Now I put in the correct email. Even if I do everything with uppercase, it's still going to find it because I made it lowercase, right? And then I put in the wrong password. Now it should tell me false, incorrect credentials. Good, that's what we wanted. Now I put the correct password, and it should say true, successfully logged in. Okay? So our login is working. We can compare the encrypted password to the string password. It validates, it figures it out correctly. Now what I want to do is add security to this. What I mean by adding security is that, cool, I logged in, but how does my app know, right? How does my API know that somebody logged in? Does that make sense? Like my application, all it's doing here is it's just, oh yeah, I have someone in the database, and oh yeah, they entered the right password. Cool. Let me give the client back a response that says, yeah, you're right, you're the right person. But then, how does my application, my API, know that that same person is going to keep requesting information? Does that make sense? How am I going to make my API understand that that same person who just logged in is the same person that keeps requesting information? Token, right? We need a token. So on to the tokens. So now is the point where you can start reading my markdown that I gave you. Right? So we talked about this yesterday. Right? The old way of dealing with this was to store some information on the server, and then every time somebody makes a request to a page in my client-side application, I would have to send a request to the server, verify those credentials, check my data on the server, and it's just very cumbersome. I have to keep making multiple requests to my server, right? So now we have this token-based authentication that keeps a kind of like a stamp or a key or whatever you want to call it, right, on your client browser that we can then use to verify that it is who you say you are. Does that make sense? So the analogy that I gave you guys yesterday was, let's say you go to the theme park, right? Your logging in username and password is going to be your ticket. So I have a ticket. I'm going to Disneyland. That's my username and password. I walk in. They verify my username and password, which is the ticket. You're good to go. Come on in, right? And then I say, well, actually, I need to go back out to my car and grab a jacket because it's cold or something, right? Well, when you walk out, they give you a stamp on your hand, and that stamp is the analogy of this token. That is going to allow you to come back into the park and access the rides again. So what we want to do is create that stamp digitally in our application, which is now going to be referred to as a signed token. And we're going to send it back to the client, and the client's going to store it somewhere. And we'll talk about where that gets stored in a second. So what does this JOT look like? You'll hear this pronounced as JOT, JWT, which just stands for what? What does JWT stand for? JSON Web Token, right? Everything we do is JSON, which consists of 3 strings. We have the header, right? The header tells the server and the client what type of token this is, what encryption they're using. We have the payload, which has the information about the user in the payload. And then we have the signature at the end, which is how the server verifies that it came from the right place, okay? It's a valid token. Or that's how Disneyland would say, this ticket you're giving me, or the stamp I gave you is valid because I used a pink happy face, not a green happy face, or whatever. Mickey. Okay, so we already talked about it. If you head over to jwt.io, you can see what a token would look like and what each part of the token consists of. Now the next part is implementing that in our code. Just like everything else we've been doing, we need the npm package, right? We need to have the npm package. So we're going to use the JSON Web Token package. So let's install that in our application. So we're going to say npm install JSON Web Token. Enter. Oh, did Node just update it while I went out to lunch? Update npm. Let's update that real quick then. That was fast. Node works fast. Node's like, we don't take lunch breaks. We update our packages. Let's let them all go. All right, cool. So now the next thing I need to do is use that npm package, require it, and I'm doing all this in the user routes file. But eventually, once we finish this file, like I've told you before, it's fine, write all the code in one file. Then wherever you see similarities, wherever you see duplicates, you can start extracting that. We can throw it in the constructor, okay? But for now, it's fine. We'll throw it all in here. I'll erase this. We talked about that earlier. So now we're going to bring in this JWT, right? JWT equals require JSON web token. I think that's what it was, right? Yeah. Cool. So we're bringing in that package. Then we're going to make another variable. We're going to call this our secret. And this, it can be any string you want, okay? Obviously, this variable should not be available to the public on GitHub, right? Like I should probably have this, what I would do, actually let's do that better. Let's do it the right way the first time. Let me not show you the wrong way. So I'm going to create a config file, right? I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it config.js. In my git ignore, I'm going to ignore config.js. Okay, so it doesn't go to GitHub, right? In my config.js, notice it turned gray. In my config.js, I'm going to module.exports an object, and I'm going to say secret. And my secret is going to be any string that you want. You can put anything here. Doesn't matter. There's other libraries that will help you create these secret passphrases, but you know what mine is. You guys can literally write whatever here. It's not going to make a difference. Huh? I just made it right now. So make config.js, add it to your git ignore, and then do module.exports, and you're going to export this object. So now, in my routes file, I'm going to say secret is equal to require /config .secret, right? And let's capitalize this too. And if that's not there, we'll just say test code or something. Makes it invisible to get people on GitHub.
So everything, well, but it's not a folder. I don't know.
You can put it in the git ignore. Can you go back to the config there?
Yeah. And then you can put all your configurations in here now, right? Like your keys, whatever, you know. I would put maybe API keys in here. Anything that you do not want the public to have access to should go in this config file.
So what is it, Raiders just lose?
Yep, whatever you want. Firing back, huh? Why you gotta fire back, bro? And we're gonna use this secret to create the tokens, and those tokens will now have that signature, which will be our secret, right, on the token. So we're gonna, when the client sends a token to the server, we're gonna verify that it's the right token by using the secret. If the secret doesn't match from the token, then we know that it wasn't sent from, we didn't create that token. It was sent from somebody else, or it was maybe, they try to create their own token. Okay, so now we're going to use our own middleware. We're going to create a function called authenticate. Okay, so I'm going to create a function called authenticate. This is going to have rec, res, and next. And what we're going to do is we're going to check to see if there is a token attached to the request, right? So what are we trying to do here? We're trying to add security to our API, meaning I'm going to be checking on a specific route if their token exists. Not only does if it exists, but did my server create that token as well? Did it come from us, right? So right now, we're just going to say, let's just console log something. Console.log. Let's grab whatever I put here. Just grab this. Okay, so this is going to run every time someone goes to a URL that starts with API. We can change that. Actually, we probably don't want every URL that starts with API because what? Because then they're not going to be able to sign up, right? So we might want to change that. So we can change that to, on our server, we can change it here, right? We can just take that off and change it. But anyways, I just want you to see how this middleware is going to work, right? So let's grab this authenticate middleware and we're going to put it, where should we put it? Let's see, let's put it in the movies router. Okay, we're putting in the movies router. And let's say we want only a logged in user to be able to create a movie. This probably doesn't really make sense right now, but we only want a logged in user to be able to create a movie. Okay? So the way I use middleware on a specific route is I pass in the function as a second argument to the route. So here's my post route, right? This creates a movie, right? This function will run before the movie gets created. And what it's going to do later on, once we implement the code, is it's going to check to see if the user's logged in, meaning the user has a token, right? So this is how we add it to a specific route. If we wanted to add it to all the routes, we would place it in the position we want it to run on the route. So we would say movies router dot use authenticate. Now this, what would happen is now this authenticate method would be used on all of these routes. Make sense? Because of where I placed it. Okay? So this is a specific route you want to use middleware for, and this is all the routes below wherever I placed it. Make sense? Any questions? No? Okay, so for now, let's just comment this one out, and let's just see if this one works. So what I should see is just this console log, right? Someone is visiting our API, or we should say, someone is trying to create a movie, right? Someone is creating a movie. Document. There you go. We should check to see if they are logged in. Let's see. So let's run our server. Okay, it's running. Now I'm going to send a post request and create a new movie. Okay, so someone give me a movie title. I need a good one. I already have Star Wars. Huh? Out the what?
Feds.
The feds? It's definitely not a super picky.
What? Sounds like a comedy.
This is NC 17. Fan rating 0.2. Oh, it doesn't take 0.2. Okay, just 2. Run time 30 minutes.
3 minutes. You just got down my company.
Oh, it has to be more than 60? Damn, Ted, you know what? Fine. Fine. Let's get a poster for this. We need a poster for Kevin's Day Out of the Feds. What we got? What we got? Which one? Which one?
Take that one.
Right here?
One down below.
This one? Let's do it. This is the winner. Okay, cool. All right, so we'll send that. So right before we create the movie, here it is, got created in our database. If we check the console, where'd you go, bro? Do you see it? So I'm looking for that console log. Is it not console log? What's wrong, bro? Did I do it the wrong way? Huh? What? No. I just want this function to run, right? And it looked like it didn't run, because then I don't see this long message. All right. Let's see. Maybe it's the wrong position. Let's try that. I'm just gonna try it on a. Yep. So it wasn't the wrong argument. I bet. So it needs to be the first argument. This is the order in which it's going to run the functions, right? So it needs to be the first argument. So the middleware should be the first argument. Now let's see. I'm going to erase it. Well, I'll leave it there. I'm going to uncomment this one, and I'm going to try to find that specific movie, right? And see if all this runs on those routes. So let's go to specific movie. It gave me one movie, and I'm going to go back to my console. There it is. It's there. If I try to update, delete a movie, I should run that middleware. So this is the way it's done. But the only mistake I made is I put the authenticate second, not first. So what I'm trying to get you guys to see is that this is middleware that I'm using. I'm going to end up using as the authentication for those routes. So this is how you authenticate multiple routes, and this is how you authenticate a specific route. Make sure it's the first argument, not the second, okay? Everybody get that? Pretty clear? So now what I want to do in here is check to see if there's a token and decrypt it and all that good stuff. But we first need to make a token, right? So in the user routes, we're going to create a token. So let's go to our documentation. And let's go to JWT, JSON, web token, npm. And here it is. So sign is how we create the token, and verify is how we check the token. Okay? So let's use call it data, they don't call it payload. That's a bummer. Audience user JWT ID. Okay. So let's use this piece of code here. And what we're going to do is we're going to create the token here, right? So let's make a function called create token. Which is going to take in a user. So we don't need to put this in. Actually, we can just say user, just like that. And then we're going to return the token that this creates. Trying to make it more legible. Okay, and we're going to return that whole thing. So what are we doing? We're using the JWT package. We're giving it 2 arguments, right? The first argument is going to be the information that we want to put on the token. So the data is going to be here in this object. The expiration date. When does this token expire, right? And then the second argument is our secret. the server secret. Okay? And that will create a token for you. And then we're going to return that token. Let me see. It likes to autocorrect me. And what we're going to do is we're going to run that create token. When somebody logs in. So that means if they're successful down here, right? So if db response.valid is true, then we're going to attach the token to the response. So we're going to res.json. We're going to take everything from the original response, right? Remember the dot operator. And then we're going to add a token field to it that's going to be from the create token function. And here we're going to create the payload. So the payload is going to be the user, the email should be user.email, right? Well, I'm going to do some fancy stuff for you guys right now. You guys ready for this? I want email and what else do I want? Let's just take, just for funsies, just take last name. There we go. Okay, it's just going to keep correcting itself. All right, so let's walk through this. We're creating a function called create token, which is going to take in a user object. And this is called an object destructor, by the way. So this is going to be the full user object, but I'm saying I only want the email and last name from the user object. And then here, we're using the JWT package to create a token. We create the token by using the sign method, which takes in 2 arguments. The first argument is all the data on the token, right? It even has extra properties like expiration date. When will this token expire? Which we create some random time frame, right? And then here we're adding data to the payload, which means the information of the user from the database is going to be added to the token, specifically the email and the last name. And the second argument to the sign method is whatever we have in our config file, or if there's nothing exists in the config file, it's the test code. It's with this string here. We use this create token method only if the user DB response is valid, right? Only if there's a valid response will I use this, right? If it's a valid response, let's send back a JSON object that has everything from the DB response, including a token, which is going to be the string that this sign method sends back. And then we can easily do a ternary here, or we can say, we can wrap this and do it if else, doesn't matter. Okay. So let's see if we get the token back. Hopefully our server didn't crash. No, it didn't. Now I'm going to log in. And I should, this is the information I got previously, right? This object that says valid true message successfully logged in. Now I should have another property that says token, and it should have a long string with 3 sections. Let's see. There it is. And then guess what? I can take this string, right? I can head on over to jwt.io. Look at what's there. So this is when the token was created, and this is when the token expires. And this is the data that lives in the token, meaning this is the stuff I can grab, right? And then look, it says invalid signature because it doesn't, it's saying that, like, you know, this is, I can look at the contents of the token, but I don't know if it came from the right place because this is called secret. If I go to my config and I get this string and I place it here, it should say valid. There it is. So now this is how my server knows this token was created by the server, the correct place, coming from the correct place. All right? One more time. So first thing we needed to do was use this JWT package, right? This JSON Web Token package. It's a node module. Second thing we needed to do was we needed to have a secret key. Any number of characters, however length you want it, doesn't matter. We're grabbing it from this config file. So those are the first 2 steps we needed. Then we made this create token method, which is going to do exactly what the title says. It's going to create a token. And as an argument, we're taking in a user object. But I don't want to store the ID, I don't want to store the password in the token, right? Those are 2 things I probably don't want to store. So instead, I'm just getting the email and the last name. Just randomly getting the last name. I don't need to get it, but that's what I'm getting. And then I'm using the JWT package, specifically the sign method, to create or generate a token. And this is the information that's going into the payload, right? Because if you see here, this is the payload data, all this information. So in the payload data, I'm giving it an expiration date or time. And I'm also giving it the user data, right? I'm giving it the email and the last name. And then the last argument is how I verify the signature, which is down here at the bottom. This is how I know the token was created from my server, not somebody else made this token and sent it to me. They would have to know my secret in order for them to do that, which isn't hard, but it's Raiders win. So then I generated a token for the user only if, 1, they're in the database. Did I find a user? Right here, this line is telling me, is there a current user? Did I find one? If I did find one, cool. Let's go verify their password. Let's pass in the password from the form. Awesome. Now this is a Boolean value, either true or false. Was the password correct or was it incorrect? So I'm checking, was that response valid? If it is valid, let's send them back the token. If it's not valid, let's send them back the DB response that says that their credentials are incorrect. So now if I go back to Postman and I mistype something in my password and send it, I should get the incorrect credentials. If I send the correct password, I should now get a token. And this is your token, right? 3 dots.
guess the only part I'm missing is when that jumbled portion of the token got like created.
Where or when?
Like, yeah, when it goes like what specifically jumbled up our token and made it into that.
So this here is returning what you see here.
Right.
This sign method creates this long string and returns that long string.
Okay,
So then when we call create token here, it replaces that long string as the value of this property. So the long string ends up getting put right here like that. That's what happens. Make sense?
Can you go back to the
What process does it mix it up? Is it mixed up here?
No, it doesn't salt it. No. So that's only for encrypting your password.
So that's all behind the scenes with sign, right?
Sign, yeah, we don't see that string getting created. Sign is doing it for us. That comes from the JWT package right here, right? So that it in turn ends up becoming this long thing, which we just have the calling the method. Okay.
Can you explain that?
Where? Yeah. So this gets today's date. Actually, you know what? Let's just do it in the console so you can see. So let's do, what does date.now give us? Okay, that's today's date. What is it when you divide it by 1,000? I think it takes off the seconds or something. Milliseconds, right? And then now let me add okay.
So that math, you just made up that math, decided to use that math?
Yeah, I think this is basically saying yeah, and it's adding time to it. So it's saying 2 hours, I think. I think it's saying make this token valid for 2 hours. I'll find out if this is right or wrong, but is it 1 hour? Okay. Okay, so it's making it valid for 1 hour. So you can have a property and the payload called exp, and when you decode the token, if this time is past what the current time is, your token is no longer valid. Does that make sense? So it was created an hour ago. If we waited for an hour and try to submit this token to the server, then it would say, hey, your token's expired, you can no longer use it.
You create a new token every time you walk in.
Yeah, you should. You should always create a new token. This expiration date should literally be immediate use, first time use. Any other questions?
So how do we use valid for an hour to create a new sign?
What's that?
What's the point of it being valid for an hour to create something
No, we didn't implement creating a new one every time yet. But I'm saying if you really want to be secure on your server, you should create a new token every single time, and the expiration date should be like immediate, right? You should always get a new token every time you log in, or every time you go to a specific route. It just adds extra security. Because if you say this token lasts for 24 hours, right, or 48 hours, and you leave your laptop open, or someone goes and hacks into your browser and pulls out the information, they can send the token. They can send your token to that API and get access via your credentials.
Shouldn't you still add tokens for encrypt passwords?
No. We don't need to because we're just saying that we're just going to send a message that says that they're not valid and the token's not going to be there.
What if somebody's like trying to hack into the API or whatever, and they just keep trying? Like, should there be like a number of tries?
Yeah.
Or like you tell them like.
Yeah. Totally.
Figure out.
Yeah. Like a number of attempted logins. Yeah.
So like, when you need a token, so what if they just keep like filling out the web address?
Yeah, I mean, you're getting into like a lot of meticulous like little things that people can do, but yeah, totally. Like if you want to keep track of how many times someone's logging in, you don't have state to do that. You would have to make a session on your server. Fine, like you can totally do that. I mean, but right now I'm not really worried about that. That's like kind of that's further down. That's like, but you're right. Like if
Can you keep track of like, I don't know if that's adding on to it, but like can you keep track of like this person has had all the tokens that person hasn't had?
you really shouldn't. There's no time when I like need to be like, oh, let me figure out what this guy's token was like last year or something like that. It's literally a one-time use kind of thing, right? It's not something that you save or you persist or anything like that. You just use it once to get back into your API, and then you delete it, and then you create another one.
It's kind of like those little devices where it gives you that code, like it changes up every like hour.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then next time you try to do it, it's a different number.
Exactly.
That thing we use all the time.
Like World of Warcraft has that thing. I think that like you log in, but yeah.
Yeah. It turns out like a lot of